Namaste, lovelies, and welcome to Tahlya the Truth. Today I wanted to talk to you about books that have inspired me to become more of my divine feminine essence. And I wanted to share this video with you. I don't know if you want to know anything about me or not, but I am a book nerd and I love books. So I'm going to be making more videos about books specifically and different types of books. I'm really excited. But I'm going to start off with some beautiful priestess, goddess, wild woman books that I feel like are either essential or they came into my life at a very beautiful time. And I mean, all of these are kind of essential if you're working on healing your inner feminine self. And as I've stated in previous videos before, we all have masculine energy and feminine energy within ourselves. But the feminine energy in ourselves in the society right now has been suppressed and shamed and been feeling guilt for things that we never ever did. Just the fact that we're women produces shame and guilt in a lot of our society right now. So I was hoping to give you guys some insight. So if you guys are book nerds as well, then hopefully I can show you some really cool books. And I also want to know your comments and your books, because there's so many books out there that are just so amazing and inspiring. So what goddess books do you know of that have awakened the divine feminine within you or inspired you in some way? I just want to know. So drop a comment down below, because that'll be exciting. I love book sharing. All right, so let's get on with it. The first book that I ever got when I was 16 that really showed me the priestess lineage and the priestess goddess self. I got a lot of light going on. It's The Mists of Avalon by Marion Zimmer Bradley. The Mists of Avalon is an extremely precious book to me. I've had this book for a very long time. It's gigantic, but so deep and meaningful, and it is so worth the read. So The Mists of Avalon is all about the Arthurian tales, but it is told by the woman Morgan Le Fay. In this book, she's kind of like an anti-hero, where you get to see the different aspects of how she became demonized, unfortunately, through the Arthurian tales. But in this book, it explains her priestess lineage, and it explains how she got to where she was in all of the Arthurian trauma and the Knights of the Round Table, and it even shares some, like, a bit of past lives and lineage from Atlantis times. I know there's a movie out, The Mists of Avalon. The movie is amazing, so if you are not a book person, go watch the movie. It has Angela, okay, I don't remember the chick's name, but it does have really good actors and actresses in it that I'm sure that if you watch the movie, oh, I know that actor, that actress, or whatever. But if you're a reader, I totally recommend this book. It is so dear to my heart, and it's so masterfully written. And I know Marion Zimmer Bradley also has other books as well. The Firebrand is another really amazing priestess book that I have that I just couldn't get rid of. I never wanted to get rid of it, and that has Greek mythology in it, and she's a priestess in the Temple of Apollo, I believe. So that's Firebrand by Marion Zimmer Bradley, but I didn't put that in my Goddess Priestess because this is my main one by her. So I went through the books, and man, I think I've read this book like four times, and also listened to the Audible version as well. It's just such a good book. So I went through and I looked at some quotes that I could give you guys from the book. So I'm gonna read from The Mists of Avalon by Marion Zimmer Bradley. Morgane speaks. How do you write of the making of a priestess? What is not obvious is secret. Those who have walked that road will know, and those who have not will never know, though I should write down all the forbidden things. 7 times Beltane Eve came and went. 7 times the winters shriveled us all with cold. The sight came easily. WithIn had said I was priestess born. This was not so easy to bid it come when I willed, and only when I willed, and to close the gates of the sight when it was not fitting I should see. It was the small magics which came hardest, forcing the mind first to walk in unaccustomed paths, to call the fire and raise it at command, to call the mists and bring rain. All of these were simple, but to know when to bring rain or mist and when to leave it in the hands of the gods, that was not so simple. Other lessons there were, at which my knowledge of the site helped me not at all. The herb lore and the lore of healing, the long songs of which not a single word might ever be committed to writing, for how can the knowledge of the great ones be committed to anything made by human hands? Some of the lessons were pure joy, for I was allowed to learn to play upon the harp or to fashion my own using sacred woods and the gut of an animal killed in ritual, and some lessons were terror. Hardest of all, perhaps, to look within myself under the spell of the drugs, which loosed the mind from the body, sick and wrenching, while the mind soared free past the limits of time and space, and to read the pages of the past and the future. But of that I may say nothing. At last, the day when I was cast out of Avalon, clad only in my shift and unarmed, saved for the little dagger of a priestess to return, if I could. I knew that if I did not, they would mourn me as one dead, but the gates would never again be opened to me unless I could bid them open at my own will and command. And when the mists closed around me, I wandered long on the shores of the alien lake, hearing only the bells and the doleful chanting of the monks. And at last I broke through the mists and called upon her, my feet upon the earth and my head along the stars, stretching from horizon to horizon, and cried out loud the great word of power. And the mists parted, and I saw before me the same sunlit shore where the lady had brought me 7 years before, and I set my feet on the solid earth of my own home, and I wept as I had done when I first came there as a frightened child. And then the mark of the crescent moon was set between my brows by the hand of the goddess herself. But this is a mystery of which is forbidden to write. Those who have felt their brow burned with the kiss of Ceridwen will know whereof I speak. So that's just one little quote, and I believe it was hard for me to pick, so I have another one, depending on how long this video goes. All right, so that was book number 1, Mists of Avalon. So that's just a fiction, it's fiction, so there's not, I guess they're not all fiction, but they all stir the soul in some way or another. So if you feel connected to Arthurian tales, if you feel connected to the Tor, if you feel connected with Avalon, I urge you, if you have not read this book, please read this book. And if you are not a book person, then definitely go check out the movie. Number 2 on my list. So I actually got this when I was getting a healing, probably a couple years ago. It was 2019 actually, because I was going through a phase in my life where there was a lot of transition that needed to happen in order for my spiritual self and my emotional self to grow. So I reached out to a friend who gave me an amazing healing. And while I was in the healing, I got a vision and a word, well, 2 words. I got the Gaia Codes, and it told me to look, my spirit told me to look for a book. And sure enough, I went on Google and I Googled Gaia Codes, and it came up with number 2, the Gaia Codex by Sarah Drew. This book, again, I love books so much. This book helped me understand a lot about myself, a lot about sisterhood, and a lot about healing, and also healing collectively, healing the world collectively. Now, I got this book in 2019, and it literally, it's a fiction, but again, it raises up, it inspires and lifts your spirit and gives you this lightness. And I want to say it almost connects you back with who you truly are in your feminine essence. So this book starts with a girl and her mother, and there's a lot of stuff that happens in it. I'm not going to tell you everything, but it is about the priestesses of Astara, I believe. Let me make sure. Astara. Sorry, Ostara, but it's Astara. Anyways, and it's about the priestesses, and they're fictional, but also very relevant and very understanding, and you have a sense of communion with this girl and her journey. And so in the book, what happens, which is really crazy, the world is essentially at one of its endings, to be reborn again. And there is a sickness that's going around. And this is all before COVID hit, so it was beautifully preparing me for the times that were changing and are still changing right now. And I really just love this book. It gives quite a wide scope of different types of priestesses and different ways in which to show your love and priestess power to the world, and the different types of women that there are in this book. I just love all the characters, and Sarah Drew is just an amazing author, and I believe she speaks and stuff too, so you can check her out on Instagram, and I will put a link down below. But I'm gonna do some reading now. So I believe I have 2 quotes, that I wanted to share with you guys. So the first one is just the prologue, and it'll give you a sense of what this book is really about if I hadn't already. Prologue. Through the flow of ages and the rise and fall of cultures, a secret codex has been inscribed with tales and stories, the rites and rituals of priestesses who are emanations of the eternal goddess, caretakers and guardians of our Mother Earth, Terra Gaia. That's right, and that was another thing about these priestesses. They're very committed to Mother Earth itself, not just to humanity, but the sacredness of communion with nature and with Mother Earth. And just, this book opened me up to feeling alive to plant life and to the breath more fully. And after reading this book and after receiving my healing, things just started looking more vibrant. Things just started becoming more miraculous. Life became magical again. So I really encourage you guys to read this book, and I'm gonna read the second quote. The mirror appeared to be lit from within. There is no other light in the room. I approach slowly. It is cold, and I wrap my soft wool shawl closer around my body and slowly sit down in front of the mirror. Know thyself. The words from Delphi are deep within my ear. My face is set against the stars and the cobalt sky. At first, all I see is my familiar reflection in the shimmering mirror as the forms begin to shape subtle waves across the pool. I see Dominique and Raj and all of my dear sisters, layer after layer unfolding, and then I see my own face shifting. I am a man, and I am a woman. I am all races who have walked the planet. I continue to look into the mirror as I transform into the fruits of my choices. I have planted seeds of goodness and those of sorrow. There were lifetimes when I was not a priestess of Asteria, when I forgot my calling and my light within. There were lifetimes when I sank into a deepest despair as I experienced the consequences of my unkind actions towards others, as I paid the price for my ignorance. There are lifetimes when the fruits of my kindness and compassion towards others have flowered radiant and full. There are lives of illumination, even in the midst of darkness, and through it all, is there a thread that connects. Finally, I look at my face in the mirror. All I can see is light. In the depth of darkness, I see 10,000 stars shining on my skin. We are light, and we are dark. We are the priestesses of Asteria who come from the stars. My soul shines bright. Okay, so this is my number 2. I don't want to take too long on all of these, but my third book I actually don't have a copy of. I have read the audiobook, and actually I realized when I read the audiobook that it's different than the actual book. So let me just tell you, it's Women Who Run with Wolves. And this is actually a classic. Like, I have had many women tell me to read this book. So when I got it on audiobook, I thought I was actually listening to the actual audiobook, but apparently Audible doesn't have the right kind, the right actual book, even though she does a lovely job. And I feel like the author who actually does the audiobook as well and reads from Women Who Run with Wolves, I think she does a lovely job. But I wanted to let you know, this book is all about the wild woman. It's all about, again, freeing your soul, and not only freeing your soul, but embracing the parts of you that people say are bad. Embracing the parts of you, all of you, you know, it's like the know thyself. So she said at one part, the bones of our soul need to be regathered together at the instinctual level, and we need to sing over them to bring life back into them. So she talks about, in this Women Who Run with Wolves, she talks about reclamation and focus, rhythm and relationship, and rage and release. And she has all of these beautifully interwoven stories of different cultures and different wise women and different women learning about themselves. And I love, it's almost like poetry, the way that the book flows. It's a beautiful, artistic, creative storytelling type of book. And for me, when I was listening to her, it really made me start thinking about what I had suppressed for myself, what I had decided was bad, and what I could reclaim for myself, like reclamation, like she's saying. And also the rage, and just knowing that anger is okay, and anger is natural. It's a natural emotion. We do not need to suppress it, even if we are women and have been told that we need to be nice and play pretty, and crying and rage is not okay for us women. The feminine needs to rage. We have that Shakti, we have that creative energy. We need to be able to express everything, not just the good and the pretty, which is great, but we need to be able to express the underside, the dark side of the moon, so to speak. And this book really shows the beauty of the darkness as well as the light, and it gives a lot of balance. So I encourage you to read The Women Who Run with Wolves by Clarissa, Pinkola, Estes, I believe. And here, I'll just show you. That way you know, and I'll put links for all of this down below. But right there. All right. So the last book that I wanted to talk to you guys about is a book that I'm still reading, actually, but it's a freaking amazing book. And again, we need that feminine energy to be totally, completely integrated within ourselves if we are going to rise to the task of then healing the masculine, the masculine energy, and transmuting that into divine masculine. So this book is by Sophie Bashford, and it is You Are a Goddess, which I freaking love. And this book, again, sometimes I just go into bookstores and books are drawn to me, or I'm drawn to books and I buy them. And this was such a perfect buy for me. I felt so, I'm still feeling very healed. And the way that this book is laid out, actually, she has meditations, and each goddess is a chapter. So she has a temple of Kali, a temple of Mother Mary, of Kuan Yin, of the Avalon priestesses, of Hecate, Aphrodite, Lilith, Mary Magdalene, and Isis. And these are all temples, and in the chapters it talks about what that goddess vibration is, and then she channels the goddess, and then there's a meditation and a healing. And then after the meditation and the healing, she talks about her own personal journey as well. And I just love how the chapters are laid out, because a lot of these goddesses, I was like, oh, I know that, like the Avalon priestesses. I actually haven't read that chapter because I feel like the Mists of Avalon have already ignited my recognition of that within my soul. And I will read all of this book, but there were particular goddesses that I really wanted to connect with, that I felt like I had not, and that I was being very drawn to. And Hecate was one, and right now I'm actually reading the chapter on Lilith. Lilith is the dark goddess, and it's just such an eye-opening and beautiful journey. This book is literally a healing journey for yourself. I totally recommend it, especially if you're not into necessarily like fiction. This is very like logical and thorough, and it's brought tears to my eyes already. I mean, it's just such an amazing book. So, and she channels all of the goddesses, and I really do feel the authenticity in this book. So I'm going to read you a little bit of You Are a Goddess by Sophie Bashford. And I wanted to read about the Temple of Aphrodite because I thought it was really beauty. She kind of takes you on a journey of healing through one goddess into another goddess and through all of these temples, which is just so beautiful. So this is what she channeled from Aphrodite. You had forgotten who you are. You might have agreed to put up with relationships that were all about taking from you, diminishing you, and were even abusive. You perhaps agreed to pretend that these relationships were love. You bent over backwards to please others, even if it meant that you lost yourself or any contact with your own truth in the process. Sometimes you bent over so much for others that it was severely damaged and it exhausted you. And through all this, a distant part of you began to question, what is going on here, Sister of the Light? Why are you allowing yourself to be trampled upon? Why do you confuse the ego's need for attention, flattery, and approval from others as a true love and respect? Why do you stay in inauthentic relationships just to garner security, create distractions, and avoid being with your real self? Why have you forgotten your sacredness and transformational potential of love? What are you doing? Do you not remember your origins? Do you not recall your greatness? Do you not know who you are? This is the part of you that is rooted in goddess consciousness. This part of you is your higher self. It is the aspect that has lived through the glory of your goddess power and creative feminine expression, the grace of feeling safe and wanted on this planet, the joy of living among those who worship your sacred bones. And that's the temple of Aphrodite. And it's lovely. And as you can see, after the channeling, there is a meditation. So I really encourage you guys, if you are interested in specific goddesses or in a bunch of different goddesses, I mean, I really do. I love the Greek mythology and I do love Aphrodite. And I chose that because I felt like it would be the most powerful for the audience that I have here on YouTube. But there are so many different goddess energies, and I just love how she really separated them so you can really feel the difference in the vibration and how beautiful and expressive our creative feminine energy is. And really working with the Shakti energy, which is that Kundalini force of like flowing through and you know, we are the feminine that are we create humans inside of our bodies. It's time for us to take all of this power and use it in the creative total creative spectrum. We can't just keep suppressing ourselves. It doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel authentic. It doesn't feel truthful to who we truly are. So I urge you to read all of these books. So again, it's The Women Who Run with Wolves. I should say Women Who Run with Wolves. I don't think there's a the. You Are a Goddess. The Gaia Codex. And then for closing, I just wanted to read a little bit more of my lovely Mists of Avalon book. So I'm just gonna read, and I hope you guys have a lovely day. And if you guys have any books, please comment down below and share them with me. I'm gonna read, and I hope you like this. All that day, in silence, she worked, gazing into the chalice, letting the images rise, now and then stopping to wait for inspiration in the meditative flow. She worked the horned moon so that the goddess should always watch over the sword and guard the sacred blood of Avalon. She was so wrapped up in the magical silence that every object on which her eyes gazed, every movement of her consecrated hands became power for the spell. It seemed at times as if visible light followed her fingers as she followed the horned moon with the full moon and then with the dark moon, for all things must follow in season. Then, because she knew that the High King of Britain must rule in a Christian land, and because when first the followers of Christ had come to Britain, they had come here to the Druids. She worked in the symbol of Christian and Druid in friendship, the cross within the three-winged circle. She worked into the crimson velvet the signs of the magical elements, of earth and air and water and fire, and then figured the low-handled cup before her, in which visions moved and entwined, coming in and out of darkness, wand and earth platter, serpent of healing and wings of wisdom, and the flaming sword of power. There were times when it seemed that needle and thread moved through her own flesh, or through the flesh of the land, piercing earth and sky, and her own blood and body. Sign upon sign, symbol upon symbol, each marked with her blood and with the water of the holy well. Namaste, lovelies. Be blessed.